summarize what Gator is in like 1 or 2 sentences, it would be, Gator is a strategy to insert myself into somebody else's deal utilizing somebody else's resources. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I don't have to have credit, I don't have to have credentials, and I don't have to have cash of my own to make money. All right, guys, so today we're gonna talk about Gator, and we're gonna do multiple of these. Basically, Jade has jumped in to our world, into the Gator world, the creative finance world. She has a lot of experience in real estate and has been doing real estate for how many years?
Oh gosh, 10?
10 years, okay? You know, today I had a conversation with a broker that has been doing commercial real estate for 15 years that did not know what a contract for deed was in the commercial realm, which is a big deal. But I can tell you, after 10 years of real estate, you've ran into a lot of stuff. You've ran into good stuff, bad stuff. You've seen everything probably under the sun in the traditional world. We brought Jade into Gator specifically because she's gonna start training the transaction coordinators inside of our community on how to do Gator transactions. And so obviously I have to train Jade. Molly's done a great job of that. Allison's done a great job. Who else are you working with on the transaction team?
Oh gosh, Molly, Allison, Shelly, and Alyssa.
Okay,
on the transactions team side of the world, and Ashley.
Love it.
And then on the Gator side of the world, Alexis and Abraham.
Okay, cool. So you've got a 5-woman army that's helping you out on the transaction side. The great thing is you don't really need a lot of help with that because you've done a ton of transaction coordinating. If you are a real estate agent, that means you have done transaction coordinating.
Yep.
Whether you were a transaction coordinator or you were just your own transaction coordinator, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So you've got a lot of experience. The challenge is if I teach you Gator, it's gonna go right into your brain, it's gonna be absorbed. You got 10 years of industry experience, so you're not gonna have a hard time grasping this at all.
Nope.
So today I thought, hey, let's bring in some people and let's do a refresher. Like I've talked about a lot of this stuff on YouTube and you already know some of this stuff, but I'm gonna fill in some gaps and hopefully answer some questions with people today. So you're gonna get some rudimentary knowledge today and you don't have to look at me. The camera's not on you, so you can close your eyes, you can put sunglasses on, whatever you gotta do.
Sit over here like a...
Yeah, why not? All right, guys, everybody excited about being here. I can see the chat right here, so please keep the chat going, connect with each other. This is what this community is all about, is connecting with each other. This is a refresher. In fact, a lot of this is just stuff that's been on YouTube. Surface knowledge. If we go deeper, great. If we don't, no big deal. I just want you to understand the concepts. All right, so what is Gator? Gator is a form of creative finance. Okay, now creative finance, what a lot of people will think of is they think of houses, apartments, they think of real estate because that's what I am. I'm the real estate guy. So a lot of people are like, oh, Gator is not creative finance. No, Gator is very much a creative finance element, right? Yep. Summarize what Gator is in like 1 or 2 sentences, it would be, Gator is a strategy to insert myself into somebody else's deal utilizing somebody else's resources. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I don't have to have credit, I don't have to have credentials, and I don't have to have cash of my own to make money. There are currently, and there will become more, but there are currently 7 strategies to Gator. Gator 0 all the way through Gator 7. Now, I called Gator 0 for a reason, and we'll get into that. I'll talk about what Gator is in the beginning, but it's creative finance. It's a way to insert myself into somebody else's deal. They found the deal. They need somebody to fund it for one thing or another. It could be a double close, could be EMD, could be, hey, I need you to sponsor a loan for me. I need you to bring something to the table. Should we get you sunglasses? You could keep your eyes closed this entire time. Hey guys, watch her put her sunglasses on. Let's see what she looks like.
We're gonna be extra today.
Okay, how extra is Jade right now? She had eye surgery yesterday, guys, so we're okay, cool. So Gator is an element of creative finance, but it doesn't have to do with actually purchasing the real estate. Right. A lot of people look at it and go, oh my gosh, I have to cold call. Oh my gosh, I have to go and knock doors. I have to go spend money on marketing. I have to do all these things. Gator was a lower level way of getting into the business. What do I mean by lower level? It means lower barrier to entry. The first Gator deal I ever did was about 10 years ago, and it was not real estate related whatsoever. Have you ever heard of factoring at all? Mm-mm. Okay, cool. You are gonna get some tidbits today.
Yay, then I'm gonna learn.
Okay, you know that my history used to be that I was a contractor for 10 years.
Yep.
And as a contractor, I had a lot of subcontractors. So my first Gator deal was Pace, the contractor, would go out to customers and do the renovations on their houses. I, of course, am not doing those renovations for long. It took me about 2 years for me to start scaling and building a team and then also start finding subcontractors that I could go do my paint, my carpet, my baseboards, my blah, 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 blah. You get it, right?
Yep.
What I would do is I would go find these contractors, right? And the contractors could be a gentleman named Ruben, and Ruben is my painter. He would paint houses for only me, or would he paint houses for other people?
Depends.
He's a subcontractor.
So he can paint for other people.
He can paint for other people. Perfect. So Ruben's got, obviously, I'm not his only client. He's got 10 other clients. I keep him relatively busy. But one day, Ruben calls me and he says, Pace, I've got a problem. This is Friday morning. He says, I've got a problem. I've got a significant size payroll. I think the payroll was about $24,000, okay, for that week. And he said, I'm short $6,000 to pay my payroll. If somebody doesn't pay their payroll in the construction world on a Friday, and the guys are expecting it on Friday, what's the likelihood those guys are going to show back up on Monday?
They will never show back up on Monday.
They will not show back up. You could build all the trust for 10 years and say, trust me guys, I'll pay you on Monday. Those guys are going to take that check that you give them on Monday and you'll never hear from them again.
Yep.
Right? It's a cultural thing,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
So Ruben calls me up and he says, Pace, I've got a payroll of $24,000, but I'm short $6,000. Can you spot me? Not $60,000, but you get it. And I said, spot you? Like, what do you mean? What's going on? Like, are you out of money? Are you not making money? He goes, no, the problem is I have a customer over here that wrote me a check. And when I took that check and I took it to the bank, what did the bank do? Put a hold on it.
Yep.
Right? Have you ever had a check put on hold and you're just like, you effing bank?
Yes.
F you, you effing bank, right? So Ruben's over here saying, F you, you effing bank. This is not freaking cool. And he says, I need to cover my $6,000 payroll. He obviously feels comfortable with me because we've been doing business together. I was one of his groomsmen at his wedding and all these things, right? This is how construction works. You do life with these people.
Absolutely.
So he says, I need $6,000. I go, no problem. How long do you need it? He says, this check, the bank says that on Monday or Tuesday, they'll release the money and I can get my guys paid and I can pay you back. And I go, perfect. So if I give you $6,000, how much money are you going to give me on Monday? He says, $6,000. I'm like, dude, I know you're going to give me $6,000. You're going to get paid. I'm going to get paid back. But like, how much am I going to make? All right. And what does he say? He says, no. I'll give you your $6,000 and I will pay you $6,000. And I'm like, Don, where do I send the money, bro? Let's freaking get this done. Like the risk reward on this is insane.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the first Gator deal I did. I inserted money into his business. I didn't have to land the work. I didn't have to manage the contractors. I just had to give him time to get his check covered. And this is called, in the business world, this is called factoring. I just didn't know it at the time, okay? There's a whole business model built after this where people lend money to people. I actually used to do this when I was in my early 20s. I used to build gas and oil products. And I would sell, let's say, $1 million of material to one of my buyers, and my buyer would pay me on a net 30. Well, I'm sorry, not net 30, net 90. Which means that once they received the goods, they would pay me 90 days later.
Yep.
So if I've got that customer and another customer and another customer and another customer, all of a sudden my pipeline of accounts receivable, the money I'm supposed to be owed, is significant. You've been here. You've been here.
Yep.
We've all, as adults with a little bit of experience, we've all been here, right? So it's a juggling game. So what there's companies called factoring companies that will come to you and say, hey, we will give you $850,000 today if you assign that $1 million invoice over to us. So when your customer pays, they pay us the $1 million, but we paid you the $850 today, so you don't have to wait 90 days. So they make $150,000 by just giving you the money before you need it.
Yep.
Cool. So fast forward, I started doing this a lot. I went to every one of my subcontractors. I was like, yo, if you guys are ever short on payroll,
I got you.
I got you, dude. Like, it's some of the greatest return I'd ever got in my life.
For sure.
And I was sitting there thinking, like, dude, I went and did a whole $100,000 renovation for a customer this month, and I made like 20 grand. But then I made like $32,000 in my freaking Gator lending.
Yep.
Here's the challenge at the time. At the time, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I could have been doing this with a line of credit. I also was like, what's my security? The beautiful thing about Gator is that we help our Gator students get lines of credit so they don't have to use their own.
Yep.
Or they can use each other to bring money to the table, called Gator wrestling.
Yep.
Okay, so they're wrestling, you've heard these phrases before.
Absolutely.
Okay, so at the time, I didn't know anything about real estate. I get into real estate, I start doing deals, and I end up getting inserted into deals where this kind of crap is happening, and I'm sure you've seen this 100 times. There's a seller owns a house, wholesaler reaches out to that seller, and the wholesaler obtains a contract, right? They work out, let's say, a price of $100,000. Well, that wholesaler, let's say they go through an agent. Jade, you're an agent. Would you let me do a transaction with you and your seller? This is Jade, the agent. Would you let me open or get a contract signed without 1% earnest money on that transaction?
No,
Like hell no, right?
absolutely not.
What if I'm a wholesaler and I'm like, but some guy on YouTube taught me that I can open escrow with $10 or $100. You're like, dude, are you kidding me? You're not even real.
Yeah, you should hang out with him.
Go hang out with him. But you representing your seller, there's no way in hell that you're going to let somebody go get you and your seller under contract with less than 1%. Is that correct?
You're not going to tie up that house and that ability to sell it.
Perfect. So this is what a lot of wholesalers do incorrectly. In fact, I don't know if you saw the training I did not too long ago with Sean Reyes, the Attorney General of Utah, and the District Attorney of California. He says this is a significant problem in California where wholesalers are locking up agents and sellers, and then they don't have the earnest money to open escrow. And so they're basically breaching contract and the whole entire transaction is falling apart. Okay, so when I start getting into this business, this is not me, but this is a wholesaler. So a wholesaler gets the contract for $100,000. The contract will say, well, you put $1,000 earnest money, or EMD, for people that don't know what EMD is. Could you explain what EMD is?
Earnest money is basically the guarantee to the seller that even if everything falls apart, they're going to at least get that amount of money.
Okay, you know what I call it? I call it the engagement ring to a transaction.
There you go. I like that.
Right? The larger and the more expensive the engagement ring, the more serious I know you are about marrying me.
Absolutely.
If you show up to me and you go, I want to open up this transaction with a $10 earnest money, that's like giving your daughter a freaking ring pop.
Yep.
Some dude comes up to her and is like, hey, I'm going to marry your daughter with a ring pop. You're like, hell no, buckaroo, get out of here.
Right.
You don't even have any hey dudes on your feet, bro. Like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Okay, so I look at the earnest money as the engagement ring to the real estate transaction of, hey, I want to get engaged with you. I want to engage in a transaction with you. And I'm going to show you I'm serious by bringing this engagement ring or this earnest money. I'm earnest about closing this transaction.
Yep.
I'm going to show that by bringing $1,000. Now, here's a great question. Does that $1,000, I know this is not for you, but this is for other people. Does that $1,000 add to the $100,000 purchase price, or is it part of the $100,000?
Part of the $100,000.
Okay, cool. So this is what I found. Wholesalers would then put me on their list, and I would get emails from these wholesalers, and I would say, yes, I want that deal at $115,000. Let's say they sold it to me. I go, yes, I want that deal. Once I say, yes, I want this deal, wholesaler obviously stands to make 15 grand, right, on the assignment contract, because him and I are now going to do our assignment contract. What is my next step as the person buying that deal? What should I be doing?
Giving your earnest money.
Giving my earnest money to title and escrow. But here's what ends up happening. I say, who's title and escrow, right? Because if you're my transaction coordinator, what ends up happening is I go, hey, Jade, we just bought a deal. And I pass it on to you. Your immediate question to the wholesaler is, who's title? Who's running title? You know how many times, I'm sure this happens to you a lot too in this business, you'll get a wholesaler that goes, I haven't opened escrow yet. If they haven't opened escrow, as an agent, you would have known that immediately, right?
For sure.
Okay, so this is what I found. I found a lot of wholesalers were opening escrow and having the title companies lie on their behalf and basically put their license at stake. And now this has become a thing. Like probably 8 years ago, this has kind of slowed down a lot, especially with Gator and other things. So what ended up happening, wholesaler says one of two things. Either A, I have an open escrow, or B, I have open escrow and here's the title company, it's over here. And I then go, no problem, let's go open escrow, or let's go start the transaction. And we find out nobody put earnest money in.
Nope.
In fact, the first time this happened to me, I went in, I started the transaction, and the seller gets reached out by the title company saying, hey, this is Danielle Pendergrass from such and such title. I'm calling on behalf of the wholesaler. Obviously, they're not calling them the wholesaler. Looks like we're under contract, just want to get some information. We want to let you know I'm your point of contact. The seller says, I sold that house to somebody else. That person never opened escrow and put any earnest money in. That contract is null and void. As an agent, if somebody doesn't open escrow and doesn't put in earnest money, are they in breach of contract?
Technically.
Technically, right? Now, you could cure them, right? You could say, hey, you have a 3-day cure, but you haven't even freaking opened escrow.
No.
Right? So in our purchase and sell agreement, a good purchase and sell agreement, your guys' purchase and sell agreement, I believe the standard says the escrow needs to be open within 24 hours of a contract being signed.
Yes.
That's part of the contract.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So here's what I found. I found that like 90% of wholesalers don't have $1,000. Crazy to think about.
That is.
But why is that? It's a couple of reasons why. Number one, wholesaling is one of the lowest rungs on the ladder when you're climbing up real estate. It doesn't require a license. It doesn't require really that much skill. It requires a lot of tenacity, requires a lot of follow-up, requires a lot of things. So it's attracting people that don't have $1,000. The other reason why it's not that surprising is because sometimes wholesalers will go have 5 to 6 contracts open at any given time, and they don't have $5,000 to $6,000 to have those contracts open at any given time.
Right.
So they might have $1,000 or $2,000, but they don't have $5,000 or $6,000.
Right.
Okay. So what I did is I told the title company, go, is this happening to you a lot? They're like, dude, it's like 90% of wholesalers open escrow without earnest money. They're breaching contract and they're causing issues for us. Do you know who Eileen Brown is here local in Arizona?
I know the name.
She's in my book, and she's been doing title and escrow for 41 years. So
wow.
they pulled data, and they found that it's like 87% of wholesalers don't use earnest money when they open escrow. And so what they started doing a couple of years ago is go, we're not going to do business with wholesalers.
Right.
So instead, I'm like, okay, how do I solve a problem?
Yeah.
Here's what I'll do. So this is what I started doing. I started calling title companies going, how many wholesalers are not opening up escrow and putting in earnest money, that $1,000?
Right.
And it's like, oh, all of them. Like none of them are doing it. It's horrible. It puts us in a bad situation because you get the agent that calls and says, hey, can I get a receipt of the earnest money? And because that wholesaler is constantly opening up escrow and doing deals with them, they're like, okay, that is kind of our client. I know we're supposed to be a disinterested third party, but the reality is
they didn't do it right.
They brought us business, and they're in this rock and a hard place. Agent saying, where's the receipt? Seller saying, where's the receipt? Wholesaler bringing them a lot of business. So what they do is they kick the can down the road for like 3 days.
Yep.
And they go, absolutely, I'll get back to you. So then the title company is now calling the wholesaler and saying, bro, do you have a buyer yet? Have you found your earnest money? Have you Okay, it's a cluster. So about, 5-6 years ago, I started doing this. I go, okay, cool, I can fix and flip. I can wholesale, I can fix and flip, I can do all this stuff. But what would be smart is if I just called all the wholesalers in town and said, hey, let me fund your $1,000 earnest money on all your transactions. I'll be your EMD funder. And if the transaction ends up falling apart, I get my $1,000 back because there's a 10-day inspection period. I get my money back. I make sure the contract says I get my earnest money back, all of these things, right?
For sure.
This is why transaction coordinators are very important, and the proper paperwork is so freaking important. So I started doing this. And my first month of doing this, I made like $40,000. And there's a couple of ways that I can make money in this transaction, okay? So let's start over to a clean transaction. Let's say, here's my seller. They're living in the house. Agent representing. Wholesaler gets a contract for $100,000 with that agent and with that seller. Here's the contract. Contract states that they need $1,000 as earnest money. And that wholesaler has the ability now to go and find a buyer for that deal. And that buyer, typically, do you know what the average assignment fee is, Jade? It's about 15 grand nationwide. Okay. So a wholesaler not opening up escrow, breaching contract, getting canceled on within a couple of days, not even having the ability to go and find their buyer. I now come in and I go, let me cover your $1,000, and I'm going to be your JV partner. I'm not their lender.
Nope.
I never want to be called their lender. I want to be called their joint venture partner. So what I do is I come into that wholesaler. I go, hey, wholesaler, I've got a JV agreement I want you to sign that says that if I cover your $1,000 earnest money, out of your $15,000 assignment that you're going to make between you and the wholesaler, I want to make $3,000 of that, $2,000 of that. Sometimes when I first started out, I'd go, I give you $1,000, I get $1,000 profit back, and they wouldn't even blink an eye.
Nope.
Then I move up to $2,000, then I move up to $3,000, and depending on how desperate they were and what situation they were in, sometimes I'd get $5 grand on a $1,000 EMD JV deal, okay? So I'd start making money there, okay? So this is called Gator 1.0. Here's one of the coolest things about Gator 1.0. There's two things that typical wholesalers don't have. Number one, earnest money.
Yep.
Number two, buyers. Because they're so hell-bent on focusing on finding sellers and getting contracts,